Welcome to this video on the Contrast Protect solution for Azure Sentinel. In the previous video, we walked through how to install and configure the solution, and in this video, we'll look at what the solution provides and even how you can customize it to meet your needs. Once installed correctly, you may need to attack your application in order to generate some data. The data will start to show in the Azure Sentinel overview page. This page summarizes the data received from all of the event sources that you have set up, including Contrast. The Contrast agent sends attack and exploit data in common event format, and this data is stored within the Azure Common Security Log. The Contrast solution also includes a workbook which you can use to visualize this data. So let's take a look. The first tab of the workbook is an overview. This will detail a summary of all of the attacks that you have received across all of your agents. The first donut chart shows attacks by outcome. Contrast Protect users will know that the Contrast agent is able to differentiate with a high level of confidence when your application is under attack and when it is actively being exploited. You'll notice that this chart mostly shows probes. This is the term Contrast uses for an unsuccessful attack. It means that the attack did not reach a vulnerable part of your application. Those attacks shown in orange here are suspicious, meaning that Contrast is witnessing an unusual activity inside of your application, which should be reviewed by an expert. We then have exploited, which means the attacks on your application are successfully reaching a vulnerable place within your code or libraries, and Contrast is only in monitoring mode. And then finally, we have blocked. Blocked is similar to exploited, but it means you have Contrast set to block the attack. This can be enabled for any rule, so if you have blocking set for every rule, then you should never see exploited as a status. Next, we can see attack techniques. This allows you to see trends in the types of vulnerabilities that attackers are trying to exploit within your environment. If you see a large volume of attacks for a particular rule type, you may want to check that you're blocking this type of attack across all of your applications. This is pretty easy to identify within the policy management area of the Contrast UI. If you're wondering when these attacks are happening, then the chart on the right is for you. You can specify a different time range, and the axis will change accordingly to show the data. The first three charts have all focused on all attacks. The next three are specific to effective attacks only, so you can focus on high risk. The first chart here shows effective attacks by application. If I hover over the red exploited section, I can see that two of my applications are under threat. I might want to see what attacks are being launched against these applications, and these are shown on the right. Lastly, if I want to determine whether this attack is targeted, I can see the URLs which are most frequently being hit by attackers. Next, it's time for some detail. If I want to see what the attackers are trying, I can head over to the Effective Attacks tab. This grid can be sorted or filtered, and the activity column is going to show me what's happening. Let's search for SQL, and if I stretch this column out, I can see exactly what the attackers are trying on this application. In this instance, it's obvious to me that the attack is by some sort of automated tool. Okay, lastly, let's look at the All Attacks tab. This is showing every attack, whether it was successful or not. The most recent entries might be useful here to see what's been happening. So we've had a look through the default workbook, but what about if we want to change it? It's actually quite easy. You can edit the workbook and add new components or edit the existing ones. Let's go for an example. We can change the URLs grid to include probes as well. So I'm going to click Edit, scroll to the component I want to change. I can see the query here to pull this data. Let's just add in probed. And I can now see the results immediately. I can hit Done Editing and then save this workbook. So this is great, but we need to be able to come into here to see the results from the Protect agents. What about if we want to be alerted about that and have some kind of automated response? And that's where the analytics rules come in. The contrast solution for Sentinel includes 4 analytics rules out of the box, which can be further customized to meet your needs. Given the high signal-to-noise ratio that contrast provides, it will only take a single effective attack to raise an incident, which can then be investigated by the SOC team. If the attack is ineffective, known as a probe within contrast, then an incident will not be raised unless Sentinel receives 10 probes within a 5-minute period. Let's look at some incidents. An incident is a workflow within Sentinel that can be assigned to a member of the SOC team. I'm going to open up the most recent one. This will open up a timeline view to show the alerts which caused this incident to be raised. Here I can click the alert and see the application, URL, and the attack details. I'm going to assign this to myself to make it active. If I now hit the Investigate button, I can see this in context. This attacker may be trying to exploit other areas of my environment, such as the network layer. Now I can decide to take action using something called a playbook. You can set up playbooks to perform automated actions on your behalf. I have set up a playbook to block this IP address from accessing any of the applications deployed with Contrast Protect. If I switch to Contrast, I can now see that we have an automatic 30-minute block enabled. That's all for this video. We hope you enjoy using this Contrast Protect integration for Azure Sentinel and look forward to your feedback.